All right, yeah, thank you. So today's February 7th, 2024. Happy New Year. This is our first meeting of 2024. My name is Martha Luch, Boulder County Commissioner. We are on site and virtual, doing hybrid here. For those of us who are here, we're at the courthouse at 1325 Pearl. I want to go over for Boulder Consortium of Cities, the agenda and our plan, and then want to make sure we'll do some introductions and then be graceful as always if we need to let somebody join us and give their introduction. Feel free to use the chat. We've had some really good discussions and connections and like, oh, can you talk to me more about that idea later or that share out? So a couple of different pieces. We changed a little bit of the format this time. Looks like we have someone in the waiting room. And so we'll talk a little bit about the rest of 2024 and going forward. I want to just appreciate everybody. I got to almost everybody in a one-on-one individual meeting in preparation for 2024. And I want to thank Mark Resin for staff support on this side. And I know we have staff from all of our teams here with the consortium. And Mark is helping Nick Robles, who's a newer member of our policy team, kind of transition over into this role. So in our next meeting, that's who will be here as well. So I just wanted to share that and also give appreciation to Mark from all of us for coordinating us and getting us together over these last few years. So I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. And what we'll do is do quick introductions. And so it's helpful for name and your title, and in your title doesn't give us the area that you're in the county. It'd be great to hear so that we know who's in the conversation and who's participating this evening. And so I'm going to start online, and I might have to get your help, Mark, because I'm not open in the Zoom to call on, give maybe 3 people at a time so folks can be ready and know for introductions. And then we'll do introductions here in the room and then go over our agenda and make sure we're ready to go.
Good evening, everyone. So Sarah, Sandy, and Paloma.
I am Sandy Hammerly, trustee Superior.
Thank you.
I can jump in. Hi, I'm Paloma. I am on Broomfield City Council and I appear to be having some issues with my camera.
Thanks for joining us. Sarah, should we come back to you?
Nope, I'm right here. Sorry, I wasn't sure which order we were going in. So I'm Sarah Mock. I'm with Broomfield Public Health, just here to support any comments that are needed from the public health perspective, since we lead a lot of the behavioral health work that is coming out of Broomfield city and county work.
Great, thank you.
Miranda, Marnie, and Ken.
Miranda Fisher, Town Administrator for the Town of Netherland, and I'm joining you via phone, so I'm going to have to keep my camera off.
Thanks, Miranda.
Hi, everyone. I might have the longest name and job title. I'm Marnie Huffman-Green with Community Services, and I'm the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, Mental Health and Social Resilience Program Manager. Honored to be here.
You win.
You do have the longest title. Thanks for joining us. Excuse my interruption. And then
Ken, you're on mute.
oh,
Oh, still on mute. That's odd.
we're trying to help you, Ken.
I did finally get unmuted. Okay.
There you go.
Ken Lenarski from the town of Jamestown. I'm happy to be unmuted.
Thanks for joining us.
Kelly, Jim, and Jason.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. Kelly Veit. I am with Boulder County Community Services as well. I am the program manager of another ARPA-funded program, the Navigation Hub. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Great. Good evening, Jim Adamsberger, also with Boulder Community Services, Boulder County Community Services, that is, and I am the manager of strategic initiatives for that department.
Thank you, Jim.
And hi, everybody. Jason Balling. I'm the Director of Public Health and Environment for the City and County of Broomfield. Pleasure to be here tonight.
Thanks for joining.
And Dan, Brian, and Ari.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dan Casey. I'm the Director of Human Services for the City and County of Broomfield. I think between Broomfield and Boulder, we've got the most number of staff available. So here to help out if any questions come up.
We appreciate it.
I'll go ahead. I figured I was last, but I'm Ari Harris, and I'm now a counselor for Erie. We successfully went home rule back in November of last year, and so now we officially switched over. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And it's Brian Wong, City of Lafayette, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks for joining. That was all the
That's all.
Online
Yeah,
thing?
sorry, that's all the online
perfect.
participants.
Okay, let's start over on this end.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan. I go by Megs. I am the new Assistant City Council for the City of Boulder. So if you know Taylor Raymond, I am stepping into her shoes. They're large shoes to fill, but I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for being.
I'm Lauren Folkerts, council member for the City of Boulder.
And I'm Jocelyn Farrell, Mayor Pro Tem for the Town of Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Mark Rosen, Boulder County Commissioner's Office staff.
Everyone, I'm Salma Fox, Deputy City Manager for Louisville.
Deb Fahey, I'm City Council for Louisville.
Thank you. And I already introduced myself.
Tom Mahold, Mayor Pro Tem Netherland.
Thanks for being here in person. Great. All right, everybody. Appreciate that. And again, if we see somebody else join in, we'll try and give them a chance to do a quick intro as well. So on agenda, what I'd like to do is just quickly go through what's on there, make sure there's nothing urgent that somebody's feeling like they want to try and add to the agenda. And I'm just saying try because time is a real issue here. I want to also appreciate the feedback that came through the survey in regards to meeting topics and also times. As you know, we switched our time a little bit from 6:30 to 8:30 to 6 to 8. And we're going to do our best to have a break right before 7 as just to have a move around and all the things that people want to and need to do. So on the agenda, we've got a mental and behavioral health conversation. And we're envisioning a roundtable, so we're going to do that as best as we can, hybrid. And you all got some questions to think about, to consider, just in preparation for the conversation. And I want to say thank you to staff who is also going to be here for presentation. So we're going to have the discussion first and then have the staff give their presentation. And the reason why is because that will give them an opportunity to answer some of the questions that come up and some of the things that they hear that they may not have thought about, and that will help guide their presentation as well. And then we'll take our break. We'll have a break and then we'll have our presentation. And there'll still be some opportunity. One of the conversations I had with each of you as members was how can we have a little bit more discussion and just make sure we have more time. So that's part of this. So we're going to try it out. And then we will talk through the schedule for 2024. There's a few people, it sounds like, that offered space and location. So we're gonna firm that up tonight so everybody has that information for your calendars. And then we'll have some member comments and update opportunity. Was there any items that wasn't on there that people are feeling like they need to have added to the agenda? Great. Appreciate that and appreciate all the input to get us here. So we didn't use a whole meeting talking about meeting topics. So that was kind of the goal. So appreciate everybody's participation and feedback. So with that, let's go, let's talk about the questions that were shared ahead of time. And I'm just gonna read those out for anybody who might be kind of coordinating right now with the staff who's gonna talk and who might have some info. One of them, what are you hearing from your residents and staff regarding mental and behavioral health needs and services? And then the other question was, can you give a brief overview of some of the recent activities, if any, your jurisdiction has done in the area of mental and behavioral health? we've tried to move this Consortium of Cities group into, you know, kind of working sessions. What can we learn from each other? What can we hear over here that maybe we can emulate or get templates from, so that we're not starting from zero on any of the important work that we're doing. So, and I think this group has done a really good job of that. So I'll look for hands either virtually or, you know, even on the screen, you can raise your hand physically if you're able, and people in the room. And we'll try and keep us to 6:40 just for discussion. And if we get done early, then we can move into the presentation as well and then have conversation. Miranda? Thank you.
Yeah, so in the town of Nederland, we have a strong partnership with the Peak to Peak Housing and Human Services, which has a subcommittee and a work plan dedicated but basically a fourth of it is dedicated to mental health. And so it's really under that work that we're seeing a lot of movement. Some really great things that have come out of that is we were awarded ARPA funds from Boulder County that'll run through the town to do like Wellness Wednesday type programs and just like community-based support programs. Also that kind of bubbled up out of that is BVSD is doing social emotional learning programming starting at the elementary school. They had a successful model that they're then moving to the high school. And so we're seeing that. And just again, I think because we have this peak to peak prioritizing mental health, we make sure that everything that we're addressing has a mental health component. I would say from kind of a town government standpoint, not really doing as much besides just making sure that we're a strong partner. We also have mental health partners that works out of Clinica, and they're doing a lot of great work in the harm reduction space and recognizing that you often have co-occurring happening. And so as we're addressing harm reduction, making sure that we are assessing where can we implement mental health services into that.
Miranda, one more thing, the co-responder, do you want to talk about that?
Oh, yes, and we have a co-responder. We have a co-responder funded through the Peace Officer Mental Health Grant, who works alongside Boulder County Sheriff's Office, and she's been exceptional at being able to provide not only supports in moments of crisis, but long-term case management, which is really what we are always missing, where officers were kind of going back to the same home and over, and there was no continuity of care. And she's been really able to establish that case management and support, and then connects those individuals with resources, not only in Boulder, which is always a challenge for us, but along the peak to peak, which I think is essential for our community to not feel like they always have to go down below to get what they need.
Thanks, Miranda. I'm wondering, you alluded to ARPA funding, and the last conversation that we did some work in 2023 with the Metro Area County Commissioners around this topic as well, and we're trying to come to an agreement about regionally with that group what we could focus on as elected versus staff programming. And the conversation there in October, November was the $250 million cliff of ARPA funding for all these services. So I'm just curious, in the items that you were listed, including that long-term case management, what are your other funding sources, or are they all somehow connected to ARPA, which I think is everyone's biggest fear right now?
ARPA, I think the biggest for Katrina Harms, who's our coordinator of Peak to Peak Housing and Human Services. DOLA is the funding source for our co-responder though. And then, you know, again, just the work happening out of the schools is just the school districts choosing to put their resources there. Otherwise, but I would say like one of the risks, Marta, that we have concerns with is when the co-responder grant ends, which is in 6 months from now, we have no idea if we're going to be able to get it again. And when I talked to DOLA, they just said, you know, depending on funding needs, co-responders is the lowest thing on the agenda for what they would fund under that Peace Officer Mental Health Grant. And that's scary because I'm not really sure where else to turn to for co-responder funding. And to Tom's point, that's just one of the most essential pieces for us is just that true case management that we've never had before.
Thank you. And I'll just share that I got an email this week from Impact on Education in BBSD, who's looking for funding for these wellness centers. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I also think that we have a true situation of funding for all the services and needs, all of us. And so I think we also need to be really cognizant of that and be transparent with our residents when we're setting up programs, and especially when they're on 6-month grants or grants of any kind. So it's just encouragement from
what we're trying to do.
And it looks like, is that Ari? Ari?
Yeah, if Miranda's finished, I was gonna be second if she's done.
Any other
I'm
questions?
done.
for
Nope,
Miranda?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. It really just building upon what Miranda said, we're involved in the co-responder program as well, with Boulder. Our funding sources, I believe, are out of our own pocket. I don't think we have any funding right now, if I remember correctly. But it is something that we're continuing to do. It's been a very good program for us. We don't have our own health agency per se. So I think what we want to do is obviously leverage what Boulder County has, the services that are provided. Weld County on the other side of our town tends to kind of not really pay attention to us all the way down here. So there's not much on that side. They may want to get more involved this year. But for right now, a lot of those services and what we get is from the Boulder side. And from what our residents say, there's not a lot of feedback in that area from our residents. I know during COVID and everything else, it was much more of a concern, but I think as we have done a tremendous job of trying to get people more involved in the community with all of our events, trying to get everybody out of their homes, to see everybody, to meet people. We have a variety of different events from that perspective, just from an isolation thing, trying to get everybody together again. But the co-responder obviously helps with more significant concerns. And that's all we have.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any responses, reflections? Thank you. All right, and it looks like Jason.
Yeah, I'm happy to go next and I'll have Sarah chat in a couple links that we have. We've been working on a behavioral health improvement plan since 2020 and use that as our overarching strategic framework for behavioral health in the city and county of Broomfield. And through our community health needs assessment, it's also a city council priority and a priority of our residents. Our three focus areas are to reduce stigma, to increase access to care, and then to increase community connectedness. And that's a very broad goal that can focus on equity. It can focus on isolation and loneliness, which we know is becoming such a big issue, and also focusing in on our youth population. We use a variety of funding sources. We have county funds that are dedicated to us. We receive state funding, like for our co-responder program, B Corps. We also have been blending and braiding our fundings in a strategic manner for sustainability. So really utilizing our retail marijuana tax funding along with our opioid response funding to support the behavioral health improvement plan. So the nice thing is when we went into the opioid settlement and litigation, we were able to build off of existing strategies and plans versus having to create a whole nother plan and silo our work. I would say what we hear from our residents is probably what you all hear still is access to care is a major issue, and everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen with the BHA, with the new regions and what that looks like for delivery of care. And we're in that same boat in Broomfield. We have two community mental health centers serving our community, mental health partners and community reach center. But with the realignment, we want to see what that'll mean for access to services among our residents and clients. And I'll turn it over to ask either Dan or Sarah if they have anything to add.
I think Jason got it covered from a good high level. I think one of the things to note here is the number of shared partners that we have across that Broomfield Boulder section, just thinking about the majority of the people on this call. Obviously, we share school districts, we share community-based mental health partners, and just thinking about how it is that we're able to coordinate between the two of those. One of the strategies that's listed in our opioid settlement funds, I think is important for this group to note that we do have, well, two of them actually, I'm going to point out. We have a behavioral health interventionist at Broomfield High School who's been able to see students on a one-on-one basis to talk through just various issues related to their mental health or substance use that they've been able to address. And that's at our BVSD Broomfield located high school. And then just something to be aware of that we've been able to coordinate with our library and our municipal courts is that we're able to do free naloxone distribution. So community members can come in and pick up Narcan for free, no questions asked at either of those locations. And we are assuming, just because we've shared the word so widely, that we're also distributing Narcan to our Adams County and Boulder County friends. Just like we share books, we're sharing Narcan, which is great. If there's any questions about any of the specific strategies that we shared in those 2 document links, please feel free to let us know.
Thank you. Any questions, reflections? Great. Thank you, Broomfield. Brian? Maybe it looks like Lafayette team is ready.
I'm sorry, Marta, what did you call on me?
Keep your hands up.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
a couple things that I just wanted to share that we've done in Lafayette. We've been very fortunate that our voters in 2021 authorized 2 sales tax measures, one for public health and safety. So we were able to do the co-responder program with our officers in coordination with Boulder County. So that's been working out really well. A significant number of our shifts, we do have co-responders on throughout the entire week. So that's been very positive. In addition, we just awarded close to $700,000 in grant funding for mental health and community support services. So we've got over 20 agencies that serve our residents that we've been able to support. So those are the initiatives that fortunately we've been able to do thanks to our residents and voters who were able to take on the additional tax to support the other members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions about how to get a tax passed? Great, a funding source. I'm surprised everybody's hand isn't up. I'll just say I would be very interested in that conversation, Brian, from some of the asks that we're hearing here at the county level. Would your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna volunteer Miranda to talk about it though. We did get up in middle and we got 3 tax measures through last time. I didn't expect to get 1, but we got 3. And Miranda, the part that goes to mental health, you want to talk about that?
Are you talking about the lodging tax?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have an occupational lodging tax for short-term rentals that is applied at $4 per bedroom per night. And the funds, every year the Board of Trustees can allocate the funds no less than 51% to Health and Human Services. So that gets passed on to a board that consists of a series of nonprofits in town who determine the best means of allocation. And so it can go everything from direct support to also programming assistance. And it's been very successful for us, because we do have short-term rentals, and it's one way in which we can ensure. I think the feeling of the board was they want to make sure that the impact of short-term rentals has a positive effect on our community, and they can do so in funding health and human services and mental health support.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions for Lafayette?
I'd just be interested in the tax measure as well, in terms of how they funded it and how they got that across.
It was actually both measures passed really well. When we did the actual study, the final numbers were actually above what our consultant had actually told us that the numbers were going to turn out. So it was a really, we were very fortunate to be able to get it passed, but a lot of it was just education primarily. A lot of our residents are already using services via Sister Carmen's, probably the largest, Clinica. So we were able to leverage people who are already using those services to kind of spread the word. But both ballot measures did better than anticipated. So we were very fortunate. I think it was just happened to be the right time.
Good to
Because
hear.
They passed in 21.
Yeah, so was there any surprises on there? And obviously it was 21, so in the middle of COVID, but the residents themselves, what kind of feedback did they provide were the things that they were really looking for and needed? Was there any information that you could provide?
You know, when you look at the list of recipients at the advisory committee, so what we did was, in order to award the grants, we selected members of the community who applied to be part of the advisory committee. And really it was across the entire spectrum, from both mental health as well as health and human services. So again, we had everything from the Coal Creek Meals on Wheels, Sister Carmen, Boulder Valley Health Center, all the way to Mental Health Center of Boulder County. So again, it was kind of the whole spectrum is really what we've been able to cover with our grants. We were, again, very fortunate. We all talk about it all the time, about how lucky we were and how generous our residents were.
Has there been any feedback since then, now obviously in 2024, from the residents in regard to what they see, what was like before and now what it's like today?
Well, the grants were just awarded out in December. So again, I don't have many statistics on that. But as far as the co-responder program, that has been very successful within our community. Lots of the community members know about the fact that there are co-responders that are available. It's been amazing to watch. Actually, I've done a couple of ride-alongs, and to be able to see our officers be able to pass things off to a co-responder and then be able to answer other calls has been amazing to see. So it's really helped support our police officers to be able to really focus on what they need to do, and then also have co-responders who are able to help residents who may be in crisis, or people who are passing through our community in crisis at that point in time, to support them, and then coordinate again with finding them whatever support services they may need, whether it be in Boulder, shelter, whatever we can do. But that's been very successful because that was implemented probably prior to the health and human services side of that ballot measure.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you all. Any other questions or reflections? Okay.
All I for the city of Louisville, we're working on standing up a co-responder program. Council has a little bit of funding allocated for that. We're working with Colorado Department of Human Services Behavioral Health Administration for potential grant funding. Okay. Do you have any questions from this group around, because some of the, I mean, everybody so far has a co-responder program. Is there a way to? I think that our chief has been working with the other chiefs to learn about the programs they've set up and engaging on what the resources available are. I think we've got that covered from that perspective, unless you have any questions, council members.
No, I don't have any questions right now.
We'll leave that to her. Yeah, and that's part of the beauty of having a regional conversation, because people are in different places and have started, tried, done, not done, and so just want to make sure y'all use this as a resource.
If you've got advice at the front end, please feel free to share.
Yes. How to. I'll say we did get a lot of support from the commercial fire groups on mental health, especially for the kids. It really impacted the kids that weren't going to school anymore, couldn't see their friends. It was very traumatic for them and their parents, but we saw a lot of impact from that, and impact on education with a lot of assistance in this.
Any questions for Melissa? Encouragement?
It's worth it. It's totally worth it. We were transitioning over to Boulder County Sheriff's Department from having our own police department. At the time, there was a lot of angst in the community. COVID had hit. We were just, and it was constantly for a year rotating Boulder County Sheriff's people that would come up, so we didn't even have a regular force. So people really needed a sense of continuity, and the lady, it takes a unique skill set. She had come from the Sheriff's Department, so she knew them extremely well. But she had a master's in counseling, so she knew that really well. And they just meshed, and I'm hoping to God we can get funding beyond the 6 months from now, because it's made all the difference in the world in keeping the top on the tea kettle when things get tense. It's made everything get much calmer.
We had a co-responder program set up while I was in my last community. It was truly beneficial. We'll look forward to hearing. Some of that. Right, okay, Walter?
So I think we've been seeing increased need for services and difficult getting access to appointments and patient services, sort of even as we've been increasing the number of programs that the city is offering in partnership with the county. Some of our recent program additions include, instead of a co-response, which we had, but we've recently added an alternative response. So medical, mental, behavioral health, independently. We haven't, that just started, so we don't have much data back on it yet, but we're really excited. It was modeled after Denver has kind of a similar thing with their STAR program. We have something we call Building Home, which is peer supportive services for individuals who are previously homeless and who recently received housing vouchers to help with, we've been having some issues in sort of affordable housing with people kind of struggling to adjust. And so that has been really well received and is helping tremendously. We also have a new, in partnership with the county, residential recovery home, Tribe Recovery, which I believe specifically is targeting people coming out of recovery related to like meth addiction. But I think after, as many people noted, just with coming out of COVID and all the sort of isolation, there's just a lot of trauma and a lot of difficult situations that people are overcoming in our community, and it's really hard to provide adequate services to keep up with the need. I think we have some of our newer programs are using ARPA dollars, and we have about $2.5 million in ARPA funding that's going to be going away that we don't currently have replacement funding for.
Any other additional questions or reflections on Boulder Sheriff to get us started before the presentation? What else have we not heard from? Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to like figure out.
Yeah, no worries. Again, it's Jocelyn Farrell, name for Tim with Lions. Actually, though, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. So Lions right now is a suicide cluster. We have had 8 deaths within the last year or so, predominantly middle-aged men. So it's fair to say in the town of 2000, we've got the majority of our residents are directly or indirectly impacted. What we're doing, though, is creating a post-vention program, and it's really organized to do some short-term and long-term responses to the people that have been directly impacted. And it's fairly unique, but it's something that is scalable that we can also share with other communities. So the value there is really excellent. Some of the things that they're going to be doing, it's community support system for individuals. It's a very using residents to be trained to be open, non-judgmental, to provide perhaps some mental health support, creating some small group prevention that's going to be focused on signs to look for that, your neighbor might be displaying something that you would not have considered before, but now because you've been trained within this community group, you might be able to ask them, how are you doing? And then creating basically an ambassador program that's more of a formal response training of about 50 community members that can also be more of a first line support in the post-vention process. So it's really helping the people afterwards where they're just feeling incredibly vulnerable by having experienced loss, whether it's family, friends, or somebody close. And to be honest with you, this is a really expensive program. Fortunately, thank goodness for Boulder County has helped us with the ARPA dollars. We are in a shortfall currently, so we are seeking other funding for this. But if it weren't also for our LEAF, that's our Lions Emergency Assisted Fund. That was something that was started back in 2013 during the flood. They're a food bank, pantry, other support. And they have seen the need in the community and hired 2 therapists. And they're going to be taking on this particular program and really trying to help manage it for us. They have 2 therapists. They have focused a lot on health and addiction recovery services. And now they're really trying to do more outreach with youth. Part of their challenges in Lions is a small community, so there's a sense of really needing privacy, that it's not, there's a stigma of people knowing, right? And so they're building up facilities that will actually make that a lot easier for private one-on-one small group. So this is pretty much where we are. It's interesting talking about co-responders. We really don't have a robust co-responder program. So we have had somebody, but it didn't last. And so hearing some of the ways that you all are using resources for that, I'm taking notes to take back to the board. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I would love to add actually that Mayor Rogan said that we are more than happy to share with everybody this post-vention program and board. So if you're interested in it, you can have it as well.
Thank you. And that's exactly where I was going to
Yeah,
go.
okay.
Mayor Rogan reached out and immediately, like, because we've got this situation, and part of what, since she's not here, I'll just say what I understood is really this vision of using this setup regionally, where none of us are in a silo. And certainly for mountain communities, our smaller mountain communities was one of the pieces that she's really hoping.
Yes.
That can be set up and then shared with others. So I would check them as they progress. Any questions for Lions? Reflections?
Has it slowed down? Or are you mid-crisis still?
Oh, I would say we're still mid-crisis.
Thank you. Kim, were you going to share on Jamestown? No pressure, I just wanted to ask. And if not, we'll go to Longmont.
I don't have anything to add.
You're here and we appreciate all your wisdom. So jump in and share at any point. So we'll turn it over to Longmont.
Okay, so Mark is pulling up our the information that Christine Pacheco, our department director of Human Services, sent over to me. And just a second here. And you can just see, some of the statistics of what we know. And kind of Longmont has its own core program, and where we're, sending out mental health experts with our police. Although there's it's kind of timed. It's like at a certain time at night it stops, which is probably not necessarily when it should. It almost seems like it should be like from like noon to later, opposed to being like from 9 to 5 sort of hours. And that's kind of an issue, but it's hard to find people to fit those situations. So you work with what you got. And Longmont, the city council had to take over the Longmont Housing Authority about 2 years back to keep it from going into insolvency and bankrupting it because of some poor decisions made on behalf of people who were running it at the time. But boy, are we going gangbusters on fixing that. So I think that's a really positive thing. It's just all the different affordable housing situations that we have going. We've actually in that we have these meth detectors that will actually go into the hallways and into the units. The problem is that the batteries, we're trying to stay away from the lithium batteries because of the fire problem. But when you use the other batteries, they're supposed to last 6 months. They don't. They're being replaced about every week, which is just ridiculous. But this is a New Zealand company, and they had to open it up and put in special SIM cards from the United States. It was just really something else to get it going there. So that's helping with the Longmont Housing Authority, and we've got several projects, including if you've been through Longmont recently, over in 17th, there's behind the Walgreens, there's going to be another big project there for with the Longmont Housing Authority, and Molly O'Donnell, one of our directors for that, is just off the charts, knowledgeable about this. She seems to be able to leverage all kinds of funds. Like every community, we're having issues around the issue around homelessness, and that's something that is somewhat frustrating to me, because that's kind of one of the things I'm most interested in as a member of council. And I think part of it is something that could be semi-fixed at the legislative level. If we can get property, commercial properties that have been just sitting there vacant. There's the issue around maybe being able to turn some of those into some sort of homeless shelter or temporary. I know our Hope organization in Longmont is moving from one church to another church every evening. So they go and they turn it into basically the Hope homeless shelter and everything. And the next that very next morning, everybody's cleared out by like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. They turn it back into the church and they go to the next church the next night. Then back to that church. It's the tediousness. Talking to the director of that is just like unbelievable. So if we could somehow get it so where we could where we have some of our commercial zoned properties on the west side of Culver, many of which are Pratt-owned properties, that we could go and get maybe 1 or 2 of them turned into something like that, even a long-term lease. That would be great, but it's going to have to come from the legislative level to get that kind of pushed where you don't sit there and it's more profitable tax-wise to have your building sit there vacant than to be used for some sort of thing, whether it be dealing with housing and unhoused or trying to deal with the issue around affordable and attainable housing. So that's one. So that's an issue. obviously, Christina has been at this for a long time, and she's just incredible. She had a presentation at the National League of Cities City Summit about what she's doing to help direct families in regards to child daycare centers around there. We have some cases where we started to look at this dashboard. We could see that we actually had child daycare deserts in part of our community. It is the most phenomenal thing, but it could also be used for other aspects of the same sort of algorithm that she has, that the city staff has created. So it's really kind of an amazing thing. And so of course, now we're, refocusing on what we're looking at here. Our Center for excellent help and excellent there. We can see the things that we are doing in Longmont. And you can see that, we're trying to, bring these services together. And again, it's kind of, that's her bag, because she creates these kind of working hubs, sort of dashboards that are just amazing. And she's, and that's, I think, why why we're doing, I think, okay. And then just the last part here is kind of where we're headed. And we're hiring clinicians and, developing a more elaborate work plan. So that's kind of where Longmont is. And I can always have, if you are interested in her child daycare dashboard, CML and the National League City has it, but we can also make sure you have. I have for that. It's just a phenomenal one that was so incredible that they presented at CML.
Thank you.
Is that dashboard updated continuously?
Yeah. So you can see who's coming in, coming out, and if somebody specializes in something, whether they speak Spanish or some sort of thing like that. So it's like there's some flexibility.
I have a question on your, let's see here. You were talking about using commercial space, which I'm a big proponent of. Like, what else could we be doing with some of that commercial space in cities and towns? But I'm wondering, does Longmont have zoning right now that would support?
Well, we have to change some things, but we're not pursuing any of that because we're waiting for the legislative area, so we can actually, if you're going to pursue it, you need to make sure that you have the ability to enforce it. If you want them to change we can deal with zoning changes if we need to. The issue is can we force somebody to not have their property sitting there vacant? That's where the legislative, we can figure out, hey, can we change the zoning to make it work properly?
Oh yeah, I was just wondering if you knew if your council is.
No,
Full council is interested in doing some of the zoning.
Well, I think the mayor is interested, and I think others are frustrated with the fact that we have had buildings literally like at 17th and Hover sitting there, a Tebow building, literally sitting there ridiculously for 2 years empty. It's outrageous.
We've got one that's been 10 years.
Yeah, and it's that sort of thing. If you drive through that Pratt area where they have several Pratt buildings, I would say that if you were driving through it on a regular enough basis, you know that there are certain buildings that are, west of Hover, and over down near the mall, that there's tons of those buildings that are sitting there vacant or partially vacant, and it's just one of those things that we could.
I was just curious about what you have in place right now with the council.
We don't have
Question.
I was also wondering if you had looked at fees at all related to vacancies.
That's a good point. I don't think we have yet, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because that's something that if they're going to, I think we'd like to see the change in the at the legislative level first, and then if we can't get something working, then get the idea of a fee. But, you know, we don't want that sitting there. It's kind of a sticking point with me. We had a shooting on Nelson and Hobart of a young man about 2002 in August after a car rally sort of meetup. And we have had that old Walmart parking lot sitting there, and it's an attractive nuisance. And they have done nothing to fence it off. They don't put security there, but we've had that. And I have asked the chief of safety, Zach, to give me a bill of what the taxpayers have spent on that investigation, and it's quite expensive. And you know, for years they've gotten their way of having us do their security for them. Yeah.
Got a question.
What's up?
Bye, Ari, and I'm gonna have to excuse myself in like 2 minutes, so if we don't get to break, just so you know, and I'll be back at the phone call it. That's okay.
Okay, just a quick question. And that was, you had mentioned that Longmont wasn't quite the same city as it once was, even pre-pandemic. Can you kind of just talk about that, just at a high level, of what observations you've seen, so that I'm just curious about common threads between our communities?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back of what I said, so forgive me.
Yeah, it was the slide. I think it was the slide before this one or
Yeah.
two.
In the sense that
There you go. Longmont has changed.
Housing Authority. It was the housing authority. We had some real issues about either before the pandemic and kind of in the pandemic, where we had to take over the housing authority as a city council. And so once where we had been going twice a month to a study session, we are now doing one study session a month, 2 regular meetings, and we then have a meeting where we break into become the Longmont Housing Authority. And it was just because of poor leadership of the folks that were in there, and we are now getting all kinds of projects going, and it's just been pretty incredible. But that, you know, yeah, we aren't the city I think we used to be. I mean, I grew up in Longmont back in '81. You know, after another police shooting, then the community changed, and you brought on the onset of El Clemente, and things kind of changed that way with the you know, being more supportive of the Latino community. So I think we've progressed, and I think we've really grown. And I think there are some communities that are still struggling in Colorado, where you hear where they pull a whole family out into a parking lot because they don't know quite what's going on. They assume they've stolen a car. Yeah, you know, so Longmont has really made an effort. They're one of the few communities that were doing things with their policing, like having a police standards board, where they, when a police officer was accused of, you know, doing something wrong, we would investigate it. And before I served on council, I served on that board, and you know, most of the time it was they had followed procedure, but it was occasionally somebody would, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the times they didn't, they would spin a U-turn on Main Street and then accidentally hit some car because they weren't thinking anybody was going to be there. So that was where they had kind of made a mistake, but most of the time it was like they hadn't done anything wrong. And so it was just people. And then we brought on tasers during that time, and there were cases of guys that had been tased. They said, you know, if I hadn't been tased, I would have been pushing up daisies. And so there was that sort of thing. They knew they had been in the wrong, they just were in a really difficult mental state, and so.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So as you heard, Marta had to step out for just a short, quick phone call, but unless there's any other observations, questions in the room or online, we could take the break. How about coming, okay, how about coming back at 7:05, 9-minute break? And then we'll start, Jim, with your team's presentation.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
And will be joining us in just a sec. She was having some audio issues.
Okay. Is there any intro you'd like to do, Jim, or anything?
Song and dance.
Tell a joke.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I could start with what we're going to present, which is some information about the behavioral health roadmap that the county just finished, which is really a very large, comprehensive plan, which is maybe a little bit more of a sketch of an approach to take with how to address behavioral health needs in the community, both from a services standpoint as well as a system standpoint. So this has been a process that's taken close to 2 years to do. And oh, Kelly, you're back.
I'm back. Am I still echoing?
Nope, you're great.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. I was told I was echoing during the break, so I hopped off and I'm back on. And Jim, I don't know where you are, but if you want me to pull up the PowerPoint and.
Sure, I was just kind of previewing some of what we were going to talk about.
All right. Oops.
Yeah, perfect. Why don't you go to the next slide?
Okay.
So what I was saying was that we just went through this process where we developed what we're referring to as a behavioral health roadmap. And so what I'm going to talk about very briefly is just some of the reasons we went through that process and how that process unfolded, and then turn it over to Kelly and Marnie, who will talk about a couple of initiatives that are reflective of the plan and are kind of examples of, but are just a small component of what we're trying to get accomplished through this roadmap. So we'll go through, so these are the different topic areas that we'll be talking about. Do you want to introduce those, Kelly? I kind of jumped all over your narrative, sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry. I hopped off right as we were hitting the main stage here. Yeah, so as Jim mentioned, he'll be outlining sort of our background context. What is the planning and the process that we went through as a county with our partners to identify the areas of behavioral health need and investment. And then ARPA is going to be, we're going to be focusing on 3 areas of ARPA funding: equitable access funding grants, and centralized navigation hub, which is called Wellmind Connection, is the program that I manage, and then a mobile crisis team that we are working to stand up as well, called the Crisis Assistance and Treatment, or CAT team. So that'll be the focus of our conversation, and hopefully leaving plenty of time for questions and feedback.
So as I said, we went through this process to develop a roadmap. And the county had engaged in a number of planning efforts over the years to develop something similar to this. But for whatever reason, they never landed. They never kind of took on life and really were able to galvanize the community to move a comprehensive approach forward. And not necessarily as a result of not having a plan, but what we do know about the system as it currently exists is that it's very difficult to navigate. People don't know how to get to services or how to navigate the various types of organizations that are managing these services. The overall system is very fragmented and it lacks coordination. It's not really set up in a very rational way. It's difficult to know how best to have things organized in a way that really make it easy for people to get access to services. And is in both the coordination issue as well as the barriers that people face, which are really about how do you get into a service, create real complications for people in being able to access services kind of quickly at the time that they need them. We also lack a comprehensive and diverse array of services. So although we've got a fair amount of services, they're not necessarily the kinds of services that we need in the right mix, and they're not necessarily tailored to meet the diverse needs of community members. And then we also lack kind of a clear funding strategy. So we have to know something about what system we want to create, and then build a funding strategy around that so that we're able to continue to support the services. Like Miranda was saying, she really likes her co-responder services, but she doesn't know where the money's going to come from in order to sustain that. So we need to have some kind of vision for how we want to continue to support and invest in the larger system. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, is there's not really an overarching vision for the system. We don't have kind of an agreement on where we want the system to go. And alongside that, we also don't have a management structure that could take that vision and actually move it forward and reflect on the developments in the system and refine that system over time so that it moves closer and closer to the vision we would hope to have in the system. Next slide. So how did we get to the place where we could do this roadmap? So we had a really nice convergence of different factors that came into play, some not so positive, but they were all leveraged as an opportunity to move towards the development of a plan. So in 2019, Boulder County Public Health funded a study to look at the behavioral health system. And it wasn't a fully comprehensive assessment, but for whatever reason, it really caught fire for the county and began to push us in a direction of thinking about developing something more comprehensive. And it had a couple of really key pieces in the report that helped us kind of crystallize our thinking about why having some kind of long-term plan would be really beneficial. At the same time, or shortly thereafter, we had the COVID pandemic. And what that helped to do was both exacerbate the behavioral health issues in the community, as we all know, and it also helped to reveal some of these deep behavioral health disparities that we were not able to address because we didn't really have a plan that was designed to move us in a direction to think more comprehensively about how we provide behavioral health services. And then we had all these dollars that started flowing in, which were perfect for beginning to leverage some of the ideas that were bubbling up from the community to begin investing in service-wise that were very consistent with what we were beginning to see as we started to develop the roadmap. So all of these pieces came together, which provided a lot of momentum for us to kind of move this process forward to the point where we now have a roadmap that we can build off of and both look at both the opportunities it provides as well as looking at where we have real opportunities within the current system that we're utilizing. Next slide. So in terms of the process, fortunately, our county human services department had resources that it could provide in order to support staff. And community services was assigned the role of moving the planning process forward. So that was really key because without staff, we wouldn't be able to move this process forward. The planning process involved a series of kind of focal areas. One is that it really engaged the community in a very deep way and brought a lot of information to the table to begin thinking about, well, what does the community really need and want, and what do they see are the major deficits within the system. We also had been having, since the 2019 report, ongoing discussions between county players and municipal players in thinking about how they would work together to push forward some thoughts about developing a plan, or just how they would work together to better enable our behavioral health services system. The planning process also involved a review of existing plans, because there were a lot of plans that were developed in the past that had good information in them, but weren't perhaps comprehensive enough or didn't land at the right time in order to be kind of the foundation for moving the system forward. And there's also a lot of analyses that were conducted on existing data sets of both services and funding. This led to the development of the report, which was then adopted by the county commissioners in July of 23. In terms of the kind of larger vision of the roadmap, the idea was to kind of center it around creating a community of belonging. So how do we invest in services that can promote a greater sense of culture and meaning and purpose and hope through the implementation of services? So that's a little bit abstract, but that was kind of the bigger vision that was hoped to be achieved through layering in a more thoughtful, more rational, a more responsive behavioral health system. This would be achieved then by ensuring that we had more equitable and responsive services, that the services were much more highly integrated and coordinated, that we had ways to help people access the services that were out there at the right time for the right purposes and with the kind of the most responsive type of service needed. We had to have a focus on efficiency on the one hand, but also effectiveness, which means that we had to also build in key performance indicators so that we could monitor the system, get feedback on the system, and use that information to help drive system improvements. And then lastly, we felt the need to be accountable to the community, because the services are for the community. We need to make sure that community voice is reflected in how the system is organized and how services are delivered. And then we also have to hear back that those services are actually being responsive and better meeting the needs of the community. Next slide. So my last slide here is just to give you kind of a high level overview of the different goals in the system. These are likely to change to some degree to become a little bit more operational. But clearly, one goal is to ensure that we have a better coordinated system, and which requires certain supports and infrastructure in order for that to happen, as well as having a more responsive workforce, which is really problematic right now in the system. We also need to have a very comprehensive prevention strategy, as well as looking at opportunities to do early intervention, kind of post-prevention, as well as figuring out ways to provide better connection to the services. So not just simply relying on people to navigate the system themselves. How do we facilitate and promote their access to services? A deep focus on equity and how we begin to think about tooling services and tooling the system so that it better meets the needs of various populations. And then having a real robust continuum of care of treatment, which is a very large topic. There's a lot of things that fall into treatment, both in the general community sense as well as, say, in the criminal justice system. And how do we also respond to crises? And then lastly, thinking about a system of recovery so that we are able to help sustain people's treatment goals so that as they exit the system, we have supports in place to help folks recover. Jason, I think, did you have a question?
Yeah, Jim, when you talk about the system, are you talking about the system in general, the national, state, Boulder County system, or is this more focused on what the Boulder County system looks like, and then in coordination with the state and national systems? It's just to get at that issue of locus of control. What can we really change and influence sometimes when, you know, for example, the reimbursement model may be different than what we're looking for?
Yeah, I think what we we mostly have control over, right, is our county system and what we can do and, you know, work in collaboration with our municipal partners so that we're all working together, hopefully developing a common vision for where we want to move the system. At the same time, we're impacted by, as I don't need to tell you this, we're impacted by what the state does. And so we have to think about how do we position ourselves so that we're well poised to take advantage of things that are coming down from the state. Like, you know, perhaps some of the waivers or different funding opportunities, or just where the Behavioral Health Administration is going. How do we position ourselves in front of them to make sure that when they finally figure something out, which often takes a long time, that we're able to take advantage of that because we've already done some pre-planning. Does that help?
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'll just turn it over to Marnie and Kelly to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that are a part of the roadmap that are being supported through our ARPA dollars.
Thanks, Jim. And just to loop back to Ari, during break, we were talking about sports, and my whole life, I wanted to work for ESPN. I almost got ESPN tattooed on my ankle. So this is my time to shine. So I got to bedazzle this and honor Stuart Scott and bring some juice. Really honored to be here, and thanks for a little bit of the foundation. I know everyone's familiar, but I think this slide does a great job representing the $10.5 million that the community earmarked and really advocated to go to mental health and social resilience. Kelly's going to go in depth about our navigation hub. I'll talk more after that about our community mobile response team, which we've called CAT, trying to get as cool as Cahoots, STAR, CARE, CERT, all the awesome acronyms. But the three main buckets are navigation, community mobile response, and equitable access. So shout out Miranda, who had talked about equitable access grants. We have $4.5 million that we really invested in almost 20 different agencies to expand and innovate access to behavioral health support. So as everyone knows, any door, the right door. For example, a lot of innovative programming at Out Boulder, Rise Against Suicide, Amistad, both BVSD and St. Vrain, Family Resource Centers, LEAF, together, really expanding access to behavioral and mental health supports at places that community members feel comfortable. No barriers to financial access. Most recently, Kelly, will you put it on the next slide? Miranda had mentioned this, but initially, very early on, there were 8 different agencies that I just mentioned that got money under equitable access, St. Vrain and BVSD. And then we also allocated mental health vouchers to Amistad and Rise Against Suicide to increase the amount of folks they could see, again, free of charge. And what Miranda had mentioned most recently, we're really excited to announce this. Long story short, there was $500,000 that was allocated to mental health, suicide prevention, first aid training. At first, we did an RFP process. There was one private equity company from Florida that applied, which is totally against our values. And so with the help of the ARPA sponsorship team, we decided to, for lack of a better word, really decolonize the process, did a press release, 30 different agencies and individuals, some who have never applied for funds applied. And we have given 10 different agencies unduplicated. So agencies that have not been given ARPA funding and in the past traditionally might not be able to access federal funds. My colleague and I are really working as an intermediate to remove the administrative burden that often these big federal funds create, and to also really look for opportunities of sustainability across all different 20 agencies that have received equitable access dollars. I get really excited when I'm talking, so sorry I'm going so fast, but really excited about that piece. And then I'll let Kelly talk more about navigation, and I'll come back with mobile crisis updates.
Thanks, Marnie. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I had a quick finger there. So hi, everyone. Again, my name is Kelly Veit, and I'm the program manager for WellMind Connection. This is our central navigation hub, one of those funding arms that Marnie just mentioned of our ARPA projects. So many of you probably know us by our more generic name that we've used in some of our initial planning, which is our Behavioral Health Navigation Hub. So just wanted to put out that change in terminology from the beginning so we're not confusing anyone. Oops. So just want to start with a little bit of background. Jim sort of touched on a lot of this already, but really the formal work around the Behavioral Health Hub or WellMind Connection started in 2019. I do want to acknowledge that this is kind of the formal start of the process. However, these conversations from community members voicing a need to really simplify access to behavioral health and crisis supports had been an ongoing conversation long before the timeline you see reflected here. So really 2019 is when the county did commission that report to do a scan of our system and say what's missing, what are the areas that we need to improve. And by and large, many of the recommendations were you really need to centralize access. People are confused. People don't know how to get into the system. They don't know what services they're necessarily looking for. They don't know what payers, providers accept. And once they are connected, it's also just difficult to continue navigating through that system. So the more that we can simplify that access point and then assist it with qualified navigators to move people through connecting to the right services at the right time, that's really what we're trying to achieve here. So the hub was launched in 2022. This is aligning with when we had our ARPA dollars. So really kind of in its startup planning phases. And then once we received financial support to bring on a team, we were really able to make this happen. And so in 2022, we did hire our first 2 navigators who were able to launch our navigation services starting in March of 2023, so just about a year ago. And really that was providing services to other county programs. So I'll talk more about that next, but our startup period, our pilot was really, how do we incubate this? How do we practice everything with our software? How do we make sure our team really recognizes the scope of service that we're providing? And so how do we make this perfect before we roll it out to the community? So that pilot space was really providing navigation to other county programs and partner programs in the community who provide navigation to their own clients, but also run into barriers themselves sometimes. So where we are today at the end of 2023, we had really, done a couple months of this pilot sort of internal hub for other county programs. And then we started to integrate with mobile crisis team, which I'll talk about next. And as of November 2023, so just a couple months ago, we are officially launched into the community. So we are live for community members. However, it's a bit of a soft launch. We haven't done a huge marketing blast quite yet because we have 3 main areas of function that, or access channels, I should say, for individuals in the community to get a hold of the hub navigation services. And right now, our central email is the only one that's open. So we've got our call line, which will be coming live this month. And then we've also got a website, which will be coming live in spring. And so I'm doing a little bit more of a robust full community launch once all of those channels are open for access. So what is WellMind Connection? So what you see on the left is really a visual from that initial report that Jim and I both referenced, where we had a scan of our behavioral health services and a number of recommendations of what would ease access. I'm not going to go into detail on those, but the sort of more simplified summary of what WellMind Connection is 3 main things: access, so make it as simple as possible, create as many channels of access as possible, and make sure that there's people that are responsive on the other end that have, clinical expertise, that are cross-trained in MI, that are able to provide basic triage to identify, is this someone who really has a behavioral health service need, or is this more acute? Is this an emergent need? Is this potentially a crisis need? And so really that's what the Behavioral Health Hub or WellMind Connection has evolved into. Also important to note, our service element, this was a key piece of investigation for many months as we were starting this work in the pilot phase, just recognizing that so many other programs have navigators, they have resource and referral elements, they have case management. We wanted to be very intentional that we are not duplicating anything else that other programs are already doing or entering their space of specialty. For example, we're not trying to be the specialists in senior resources, but we know how to connect really well to the AAA. Same with housing and sort of, the experts in those unique sort of nodes of services. We don't want to step on those toes and we don't want to duplicate. We just really want to be here to assist people to connect with those respective nodes, I suppose. So a little bit about our evolution. I kind of talked about this already. In 2023, we started providing navigation primarily to program staff that were working with clients. So we had referrals from our 3 different human service departments: Housing and Human Services, Community Services, and Public Health, and various programs within each of those departments. Our biggest referral provider at the beginning was really our co-responder team. We were launching a little bit in tandem with them. So they were really kind of our first users or first customers of this navigation hub. To date, we have seen approximately 200 individual referrals. And just a couple notes on some of the initial trends we're seeing. I'm sure won't surprise anyone here, but trends in families and youth needing support. So it was very common that we would, for example, get a referral from a co-responder for an individual, and then once connected to that individual, figure that they have children in the home or family members that were also in need of behavioral health supports. So really quickly kind of grew from one referral into families of referrals, which was great to be able to connect and kind of expand out without having organically, without having any exclusion criteria. And then other trends that we were seeing in service type: housing, employment, benefits, navigation. Of course, no surprise to you all, but we are a behavioral health hub, and we've been very clear that that's really our lane, and we're here to connect people that have primarily a behavioral health need. However, these things don't happen in a vacuum, and we all know that individuals present with not just a behavioral health need or a connection to treatment, but also a host of other social determinant of health sort of needs that they require assistance with to really feel whole. And so we do also connect folks to those supportive resources when necessary. And then it was about 6 months ago, as we were starting to pivot and start thinking, okay, we can grow this out of the pilot space, out of just working with other county programs. Let's roll this out into the community, that we really started to align our work with the mobile crisis team. And so really Marnie and I and our respective teams got together and figured, crisis and behavioral health service connectivity are really 2 ends of the same care continuum when it comes to behavioral health. And so how can we make this connectivity even more seamless and simple for individuals in the community that don't really know where to turn? And so a decision was made to formally integrate our teams. So we have an integrated staffing model. We're going to have overlapping hours, and all of those 3 avenues of accessing the hub that I mentioned. So our call line, our email, and our website, that'll be the primary way to access both of our teams. So our hub navigators will be providing initial triage to determine, is this really sort of a lower acuity resource connectivity piece? Okay, let's move them over to a navigator for assignment. Or, have we triaged this into the space of, this is maybe an active crisis, in which case we would be dispatching Marnie and the mobile crisis team. Little bit of repeat here. We did open to community referrals in kind of small batches and via our email address in November, and we are expanding those 2 additional channels of the call line and the website. Call line by the end of this month, website by spring. This is exactly kind of what I just described. This is this is kind of the simplest 30,000 foot level of what Wellmind Connection will look like when those 3 functions are standing. And people can access through those 3 channels. It will come through to our navigation team. We are cross-training with our crisis team so that we're all on the same page about what questions we're asking to determine the level of acuity or the service need of that individual. If they are determined to be in a state of an emergency, 911 and co-responder teams are still the best route. if there's another active crisis, and they do want to see services immediately, we would dispatch the crisis assistant and treatment team. Otherwise, if this is something where they have time to work with our navigators on connecting to other services, they would stick with the hub navigators. So who do we serve? This is just an important note. We serve everyone. So all ages, behavioral health resources, as well as connection to other supportive resources. We like to mention this point just because, this was a really powerful aspect as we were working with some of our other county programs, in that many of the programs would have exclusion criteria, or maybe they were grant funded and they had to stop working with, their clients for XYZ reasons. And so they would connect them to the hub, because we don't have exclusion criteria at this point. We are open to all members of the public. Quick closing note about our fabulous team. So right now we have 4 navigators, one of whom also serves as a navigation supervisor. 3 of our 4 staff are bilingual. So this was a really important point to both Marnie and I in building our teams and making sure that we're able to be as responsive as possible to everyone in the community. And so we're just really excited about the teams that we've been able to build. And they're just wonderful. So, so how to use Wellmind Connection. Email right now. This is a little bit about the process so people know what to expect, and to know that we're not going to inundate you with a ton of questions, but to also let you know that as our email line is the first line of connectivity open right now, there is a turnaround time there, right? And so we're not doing crisis right now. If we do have crisis needs come through, we're referring them to other crisis services until Marnie and her team are standing. And then again, those other lines of connectivity coming online very soon. I'm gonna pause before I hand it off. I think I saw a hand go up for question.
Yeah, just the quickest question. I mean, thank you very much for the presentation. A tremendous job in trying to put this together. Being a project manager, I fully understand how complicated it is to put the pieces of the puzzle together. What were the biggest surprises that you had as you went through this, if you were to name 1 to 3 of them that you didn't expect, and how you dealt with that?
I think one of the surprises was, in full transparency, misunderstanding about what we're trying to achieve, potentially from other programs that have expertise and wonderful staff already doing navigation and service connectivity. And so I think there was a lot of nurturing relationships with our partners and other county programs to really build that story that we're here to kind of supplement whatever they're already offering, supplement that. And one of the more concrete ways that we operationalize that early on is to say, okay, well, we're going to offer 2 lines of services, 2 lines of navigation. One is, if you all feel confident as another program or another community provider, if you feel confident enough in our team to hand off your individual for services, we'll work with them. But hey, if you don't know who we are yet, if we're a new program, if you're kind of like, hey, we kind of do this already, maybe you're stepping on my toes, we'll work with you instead. And so we called that line of service case consultation, and we would work directly with the program manager staff to build that trust and to make sure that they understood that we were here to be a supportive and supplementive resource for both their client and their program staff alike. 2 other things, I don't know.
Or 1, doesn't matter.
I'll leave it at that just for the sake of time, but I can probably think of others and get back to you.
The same question will be to Marnie too at the end of her discussion as well.
Oh, good. There you go, Marnie. You're prepped.
All right. Thank you.
Are there other questions before I pass off to Marnie to talk a little bit more about mobile crisis?
I'm actually also just going to do 1 slide so we can open up for questions. Kelly, if you can just move to the mobile crisis slide. So, in piggybacking, I just want to honor Kelly's work. They've been in the navigation space for the last 3.5 years, and we've been in the space of trying to create program design and implementation in the last 9 months. So we're catching up to Kelly's team, but I'm really honored and proud to say that we've hired our full team, fully bilingual. We also, just a shout out to the ARPA process. I think everyone here knows, but part of all of our ARPA projects, we went through the GARE racial equity tool and racial equity panels from the beginning of program design to really ensure that we're not just talking the talk, but walking the walk around equity. That's been incredibly supportive. And then also a shout out to our ARPA communication team. We work very closely with Aisa and Sophia, who not only have helped us in recruiting staff, but also elevating the programs, looping back to the community and really making sure that we are communicating with community members of what they've asked for. So big shout out to our colleagues at the ARPA team. We're really trying to do something different. So I want to shout out all the call responders. The last year, we've been doing tons of research and situational awareness, talking to all the co-responders, very close relationship with CERT and CARE, very close relationships with LEAD, with CORE, with our local co-responders, developing relationships with PD and sheriffs, ensuring that we're not duplicating services. We're actually really trying to create something that hasn't been created. We are creating a 0 to 26, so following the guidelines of the roadmap and also a lot of the gaps in services, a fully child and family mobile crisis team. That's where we're going to start. So 0 to 26 or any family members. We really want to leverage family support, community resilience. Our goal, like Kelly said, is to launch at the end of this month. We're figuring out call center, policy and procedures, transportation, fun nuts and bolts. But the community was very clear, and I know everyone will agree, that folks want a local, trusted, and known mobile crisis response. So again, I want to shout out to 988, but as we've researched 988, as many folks know, I think it's less than 15% know about 988. 988 rolled out 2 years ago. If anyone in the room calls 988, they will respond and potentially dispatch a mobile crisis team through the state, through Signal and SAFI. They respond to 8 different regions. When we were doing research, really appreciate all the work they're doing, but they're not known, they're not local, and they don't have the ability to work with the navigation hub like we do. So we're really trying to create almost like a localized 988 for Boulder County, where Boulder County residents know that they're going to get culturally responsive services, not only that our language acquisition is going to be there, but that they know, whether in the LGBTQ community, rural communities, or BIPOC communities, that they're going to get heart-centered, equity-centered responses and services. Just really quickly, obviously, we're ensuring that evaluation is our engine, not our caboose. So already starting evaluation measures to see what's working, what's working and what's not working. But I want to also just give one more shout out that because we have innovative and transformative funding, we're bringing in one of a kind, state-of-the-art academy called the Lay Workers Academy. I'm working closely with Erin Jones at Workforce, who's doing a ton of work in the behavioral health space. But the Lay Workers Academy, we specifically did not require licensure or a master's. We wanted to build a team of community members that look and feel and vibe like the community. And so we're training both the navigation hub and the mobile crisis response, along with 6 other colleagues at Criminal Justice Services, in a 70-hour, heart-centered, equity-centered, best practice, intensive training that elevates all of the crisis workers and actually has research outcomes that it's more effective than licensure and masters. I keep joking, I wish I knew about this 25 years ago, as I'm still paying back my master's, but we're really excited to incubate this in the community and also tackle the workforce shortage that's been going on with mental health workers. For Kelly and I, the most important thing for these programs to work is that our staff are motivated, that we reduce burnout, that we can maintain, sustain, and retain really high quality staff. So that's in a nutshell what we're doing. Ari, back to your point, I think what's really surprised us in a really positive way is when I came back to the county, a lot of folks were saying it's really hard to hire mental health crisis workers. And I heard a lot of people say it's hard to hire bilingual staff. It's just not true. We mandated our positions bilingual. When we actually did bilingual preferred, we had 8 applicants. When we did bilingual mandated, we had 24. So we're really excited about committing to increasing our staff. And not only does that support BIPOC community, but that elevates mental health across all domains and really decolonizes how we practice mental health. Questions, comments, thoughts?
The only other question I would ask is, to your point of trying to maintain the staffing that you want and trying to keep them energized and also succession plans for others to come into it. What are the things that, you know, from an elected leader perspective like myself or others, that we can see we can help with to help in that area.
You know, I know I'm preaching to the collective choir, but Kelly and I have talked a lot about, you know, all the emerging research around burnout. Is it's not about pay, it's really about feeling effective and doing quality services. And so we're really hoping that with the support of the Lay Workers Academy, that we are ensuring that clinicians are being effective in this space. And if they're not being effective, then there'll be burnout. But we're really focusing on no such thing as compassion fatigue, that really just helping train folks around empathic distress and supporting an environment of belonging and inclusion, just like we're trying to do in the community. So our hope, Ari, and hope to loop back that we maintain all of our staff and that we're supporting them in really innovative ways to not only expand their training, but also the Lay Workers Academy does a lot of work around preventing burnout. And again, is equity centered. So we're really looking at even transforming how we support our clinicians.
I think also the way we've, oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was
No,
just
go
going to
ahead.
say the way we've built our teams has been very intentional. The timing, the cadence, the blending of our two programs has been really thoughtful, I would say. I think because both of our programs are sort of in this startup phase, bringing everybody in and making everybody, you know, we don't really have a sense of hierarchy. It's like we're building this boat together and everybody has something to contribute. And I think that, you know, people have come out with different skills that they didn't necessarily think they got hired for, and they're shining on that. You know, we have navigators that are like, oh, well, I used to work on communications and marketing. Let me tell you everything I know about that as we roll out to the community. So sort of pulling those things forward has been super trust building, I believe, with our staff. And then the other thing is a lot of cross training. So recognizing that our navigators have different skill sets than our crisis interventionists, and making sure that everybody's comfortable kind of you know, doing the same level of triage, recognizing where they can hand things off, recognizing when things are within or outside of their scope and who to turn to. So we just have been really intentional about kind of blending the way we operate together really well, I suppose.
It's very good. Yeah, I from the perspective of what they do and pay, et cetera, I know that that's outside of it, but also I'm looking at it from the standpoint of housing affordability from a security perspective for them. So that because you're looking for somebody who's local, somebody who's there, we all know what Boulder County is like. We all know what the average income is for most of it. So from a housing affordability standpoint, is there some way that we can kind of wrap in some of those programs or policies to help support those kind of workers that can be local? And here in Erie, for instance, we're trying to build housing affordability here so that our firefighters, police officers, et cetera, and also frontline workers like yourselves, and what you're kind of trying to do for your folks, they can live here in the community they're in so they can understand the community and be able to afford it and not have to worry about that. And I think that's the thing that I'm thinking about is how can we bring that component into it?
Thank you, Ari. I feel like that might be a bigger conversation. And it's making me think of the housing summit we had last week. There was another question in the room, and we have this might be the last question, just so we can finish up our agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, my question primarily is, what is the rollout plan and how are you educating, you know, the people who might need these services? That's my question.
So we have a couple different avenues on going on right now. So, I'm sorry, did I talk over you?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got a little feedback there. So we have a couple different avenues that are happening right now. So in terms of rollout, so we've primarily been working within kind of a smaller grant that's through the CDPHE to start rolling out with a set of trusted partners, primarily providers that serve the Latino and Spanish speaking community. We also have providers that serve the rural community, like LEAF, which you mentioned earlier, and also Out BC. So we've got sort of this cohort that's helping us incubate, like how are we actually marketing this to different populations? How do we scale this out in a meaningful way? Simultaneous to that, we just have a lot of little nuts and bolts happening with our internal communications team around marketing, PR, how we want to move these materials out into the community. I think we've been pretty intentional that we've kept our marketing a little bit limited and internal until all 3 avenues of those access channels are open, because when they are, that's really when we want to put out the big sort of splash. In terms of, potentially KGNU, a little bit more of that like market presence, branded materials, community events. But we do have a number of partner events that are happening already throughout February, March, and April. And they're really being hosted with that user cohort, that first user cohort that I mentioned in that smaller grant, in conjunction with a community advisory group that we are just starting to stand up now and really building the roster of. So there's sort of a few different avenues that are coming together, but I think so the primary answer would be we're starting small right now. And then as we continue branding, growing those areas of functionality, we have other plans in the works for a couple months from now, sort of larger splash market presence.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would thank you to your whole team for being here and presenting and sharing. I think what I'd like to say before we move to the next agenda item is simply that I think this is the conversation that we could maybe get to at our next meeting in a brief. What I'd like to hear from you all is how can this group help get the services? As far as I'm concerned, until we have people using all these services, we're not responding to community members. So there's a ton of work put into this, and these teams have done fascinating and really critical work. But we have now the responsibility to get to community members. So I would love your input, and I think there's something you're thinking of in one email in the interim. That's great. So thank you all. Just to get back to the rest of the end of the agenda here, let's look at our meeting schedule really quick. It was in your agenda in regards to the topics. All of you, we had one-on-one meetings. Some of you did the survey or both. And Nick and Mark put together all the votes, etc. We will, before the next meeting, send out again, if you remember how we were doing meetings previously, to send you a few questions so that any presentations that people bring from your different communities, yourself or with your staff, are kind of similar focused. And then we're going to keep more time for discussion, as that's one of the goals here. But so those are the topics. So the question I had is if anybody specifically we had some locations offered for hosting, and I didn't know if anybody had a specific date and time or time now that you see topics, etc. And otherwise, what we can do is just have Mark go through the list.
You know, on August 7th, that regional affordable housing fund tax would be great if we looked at it with Longmont, but what we have done is bring in our star player, Molly O'Donnell. She is just really incredible and should be able to help that. So Jeff to Sandy and see if we can have Longmont host.
That'd be great. Yeah, she facilitated one of the sessions at the Howard Summit for that sector of the community, so thank you. So the rest of it will work out on email. And then what I wanted to share, one of the other asks from one of our members was, because we are planning to, instead of just meeting here at the courthouse in Boulder County when we host, to host up at the Longmont Hub and host over at the Southeast Lafayette Hub, because I know there's some of you in the room who haven't been there yet. And at the same time, do a quick tour of some of the main services that are on site. And I met with our public health team today, and they're very excited. And our Boulder County team, I met with them separately, and they would love to show services. And that can help you all, because again, it doesn't matter what facility we have if we don't have people accessing.
Your Lafayette Hub, I went to the grand opening. It's just incredible. It's just beautiful. I mean,
and until we have people there getting services, it's just a building.
Yeah.
So, and I say that as one of the owners from the county's perspective. So, the only other piece that's on here is if there's any community events that folks want to share and please use the chat. All of the slides, the presentation information will get sent out by Nick and Mark later. But any big events people want to make sure that's shared out. The only one I'll share out is that Boulder County commissioners do have a town hall tomorrow night
Thursday the 8th at 5:30 to 7, and it'll be around disaster preparedness. Heard the interest from this group, and so we asked HR if he could help us in the town hall. And we're inviting Boulder County Housing Authority residents, and are working with HOAs and others, just to try and make sure more people have access to that really critical.
Where's that?
At the spoke on Kaufman. Again at 5:30, so that's, I have.
Upcoming over the next couple of months, are going to be a couple of minimum wage engagement opportunities in the 5 communities that are working on that. So a lot of those locations and times are being settled and those details are being ironed out. But there should be press releases coming out here in the next couple of days, if I'm not mistaken, with some of those community engagement details.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And then the April meeting, that will be one of the topics, as well as our annual transportation update. So stay tuned. Great.
Yes, I have a just sort of housekeeping question. I was wondering if the sort of names and email addresses of people who are part of the consortium, all the different electeds have been updated on the website, or if it could be updated and shared out.
We can do that. I saw a nod from staff report, but I'll make sure that happens.
Yeah, there's been some turnover in consortium representatives, so if that, right now, that, Sarah and I
Thank
were
you
just
for
talking earlier about rallying and corralling all the names of your alternates in particular, right? I think the primary is relatively easy, but the alternates are a little more difficult.
Right. All right, well, I appreciate everybody meeting. Those of us who are in the room had real food. Just popcorn. So consider that, and I know everyone's schedules are tough. As I always say, and I just want to thank staff, for all of us that are elected, we chose to be 24/7. We chose to have 12-hour days, and it's almost 12 hours right now, and our staff didn't. And so I just want to acknowledge that and really appreciate the commitment of public service that you all continue to do, and just being here and sharing with us is really important. So we appreciate you.
Yay, staff.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great night.